She said I'd never see my grandsons again unless I paid for her dream wedding.
I whispered that sentence to myself over and over as my eyes traced the numbers on the contract. $520,000. $500,000 for a single day, a few hours where my name wouldn't even appear on the guest list. I signed anyway. I signed because at 73 you get tired of standing at the edge of someone else's happiness, begging to be noticed, hoping love can be bought with checks and invoices. Selene, my daughter, used to run into my arms without hesitation. When she was little, she would leap from the hallway, arms flung wide, squealing, "Mommy, mommy." Now she runs numbers, budgets, guest lists, and deadlines. And me. I had become another item on her to-do list. One to fund, to manage, to sideline, but never to love. "You said you wanted to be involved," she reminded me coldly, eyes calculating, her tone clipped as if I had volunteered for humiliation. "This is your way of showing up." But I wasn't invited to planning meetings. I wasn't copied on the emails. I wasn't introduced to Jard's family. The rehearsal dinner had taken place a week ago at a vineyard I'd never seen. I heard about it through a neighbor's niece who posted pictures on Instagram. That's how I find things out now, not through my daughter, not through a call, not through a message, but through photos, captions, and sideways mentions. And still, I paid. I paid because I wanted to see my grandsons, 7 and 5. Both born after Selene moved to California, chasing a vision and a fiancé who drove a Tesla and called me ma'am, as if I were the cleaning staff instead of the woman who raised his fiancé. The last time I saw the boys was Christmas. They had brought me a mug that read "Best Grandma" and then spent the day glued to an iPad while Selene and Jard argued over a vegan roast in the kitchen. When I tried to take a picture with them, Selene pulled the phone away. "No pictures," she hissed. "You know how Jard is about online presence." I didn't know how Jard was. I didn't know anything except that I wanted to see my grandchildren, and I would pay for it. I paid because I still have her childhood drawings tucked in a shoebox beneath my bed. Crayon hearts, stick figures with backward letters spelling "I love you, mommy." That little girl, full of life and laughter, is gone, but I can't seem to let her disappear completely. So there I was, sitting across from the wedding planner, a young man named Travis with mirrored nails and a pencil behind his ear, signing every line. Catering, florals, photography, guest lodging, live band, private transport. Makeup for the entire bridal party. Every expense, every arrangement, all in my name. "You understand that if anything changes less than 24 hours before, the deposits are non-refundable?" Travis asked, the faintest shadow of pity in his eyes. "I understand," I said. My voice didn't waver, though inside I felt hollow. He offered me lemon water in a glass that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Later, I called my lawyer. "Put everything under my name," I instructed. "Every contract, every invoice, I want full administrative control." There was a pause on the line. "That's not standard, Martha," she said. "Most parents write the checks, but I'm not most parents," I interrupted. "And I'm not stupid." She drew up the papers as instructed, and I sat on my porch in the fading light, tea in hand, receipts spread across the table like evidence of a small, personal surrender. My street hasn't changed in 40 years, the mailboxes are the same, the trees are taller. My knees ache more than they used to. I stared at the numbers, whispered to no one, "This better be worth it." It wouldn't be, not because of the money. I've had money, I've been without it. It all disappears eventually. But I clung to hope. A fragile, stubborn hope that if I paid for this wedding, Selene would see me, not as a burden, not as someone to manage, not as a paycheck, but as her mother. Her only living parent. The woman who held her through fevers, scraped knees, heartaches, and silent bathroom floor tears. I signed the final line. And I sat there for a long time, letting the dusk settle around me, thinking about the little girl who once ran into my arms, about the tiny hands that clung to mine, about the hearts and stick figures and the promise of love I had believed would be enough to bring her back, even if just for a day. I didn't know then that love, no matter the price, isn't always enough. But I paid. And in the silence that followed, I realized that sometimes love is less about seeing and more about enduring. 2 days before the wedding, Selene delivered another decree. She didn't call it that, of course. She smiled with the rehearsed politeness of someone practicing lines for a play I had never auditioned for. "Don't wear the navy dress," she said, her eyes scanning a tablet. "It's a bit outdated. We want the photos to have a modern aesthetic." I stared at her, swallowed. It's all I have, I said quietly, the words barely leaving my throat. She didn't hesitate, didn't offer a solution, just tapped on her screen and moved on, leaving me standing in the middle of the room like a ghost who'd overstayed her welcome. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the dress laid out in navy silk. I had chosen it with care, thinking it modest, appropriate, something that said, I'm here, I matter. Now it was wrong, an embarrassment. I made a decision I hadn't made in years. I would buy a new dress. I called a cab and went downtown. The boutique was small, tucked between a vegan cafe and a stationery shop. The mirrors were kind, angled just so. I let myself look slowly. My hair was streaked with gray, my hands wrinkled, my knees creaking beneath the weight of decades. And yet I wanted to feel visible. A deep green dress caught my eye. The saleswoman pulled it from the rack with a flourish. I stepped inside the fitting room and slid it over my head. The fabric fell well, soft but structured. The sleeves covered the parts of my arms I no longer recognized. The neckline was respectful, not revealing, not demanding, just solid, elegant. Mine. The saleswoman stepped behind me. You look beautiful, she said, genuine. I smiled faintly, paid in cash I could hardly spare, and carried the dress home like a small victory. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Selene. No greeting, no warmth, just instructions. Arrive at 3:30, don't bring a +1, please stay quiet during the ceremony. Jard's family is particular. No, we're excited to see you. No, thanks, Mom, just rules. I read it 3 times, then set the phone aside. The weight of expectation pressed on me, heavy as an oak branch across my chest. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, carried it to the porch, and watched the street glow pink in the fading light. Sleep didn't come. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click with each slow, hypnotic turn. And memories came unbidden. I saw Selene as a 7-year-old bouncing in the living room on her birthday. I had baked a chocolate cake with sugar daisies, though I didn't have much that year. She squealed with delight so loud the neighbors must have thought we'd won the lottery. She had hugged me over and over, her small arms squeezing tight, eyes shining. She loved me then. And now that love felt like a fragile, distant echo. I had spent decades shaping it, guiding it, enduring for it, and still I had become invisible. Morning came bright and sharp, cutting through the kitchen window like a truth I couldn't avoid. I dressed slowly, pulling on the green gown, smoothing the fabric across my shoulders. I tucked my hair back, ran a brush through the silver streaks, and fastened my late husband's watch around my wrist. It no longer ticked, but it still felt solid, a reminder that some things endure even when the world around them shifts. I approached the mirror and studied myself. Not just the dress, not just the face, but the shoulders, the hands, the spine, the history in my eyes. I whispered to the reflection, let them see you, all of you. The reflection didn't flinch. It didn't ask for permission. It was steady. It was me. I left the apartment with deliberate steps, green fabric swishing around my calves, carrying a sense of presence I hadn't allowed myself in years. The cab ride felt long and quiet, each stoplight a reminder that I existed in the world, moving through it, still here, still capable of claiming small victories. When I arrived at the venue, I didn't hurry. I stood for a moment in the sunlight, letting it spill across my dress, warming the arms that had held babies, wiped tears, mended wounds, and signed checks far beyond their worth. I had paid for a wedding, yes, but I had also paid attention to myself for a moment, claimed dignity that no amount of rules or budgets could take. Selene didn't come to meet me at the door. Her eyes were elsewhere, on the event, on the timeline, on Jard. But I was visible, not invisible, not forgotten. I straightened my shoulders and walked inside, ready for the day, ready for whatever glances or dismissals might come my way. My green dress clung like armor, but also like a promise. I had endured, I had survived, I had shown up, and for now, that was enough. The venue was called the White Juniper, one of those converted barns with chandeliers hanging from exposed beams and lavender sprigs tied delicately to every chair. It was the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a glossy magazine, the kind Selene used to cut pages from in high school, gluing her dream weddings into collages that ignored boys, grades, and life itself. Funny how she had circled a perfect wedding before she circled a decent man. I arrived at 3:28, not a minute early, not a minute late. Punctuality had been drilled into me by life, by decades of raising a daughter who believed in schedules more than warmth. The parking lot was already a sea of SUVs, rental vans, and a red Tesla I immediately recognized as Jard's. Vendors moved like ants with purpose. Catering staff in black aprons, florists in tank tops with thorns sticking to their fingers, two men unloading lighting equipment with ambience printed across their shirts. Not one of them spared me a glance. I walked past the check-in table. A young woman in a pastel jumpsuit looked up, clipboard in hand. "Are you with the bride or the groom?" she asked. Simple words, straightforward, yet I hesitated. I had a right to be here, but what right was left for a mother who had written every check, paid for every detail, and yet was treated like a ghost? "The bride," I said at last. "I'm her mother." Her eyes darted down to the clipboard, flipping pages with brisk efficiency. "Name, Martha Hendress." She scanned the list, frowned. "I don't see you here." A cold ripple crept up my spine, but I did not shiver. "I paid for the wedding," I said calmly, deliberately, as if those 5 words could anchor me to the room. "Oh," she straightened immediately. "I didn't know. Sorry. Go right in, Mrs. Hendress." I walked through the wide barn doors into a space I had funded and yet been written out of. Rows of pristine white chairs stretched out before a hand-woven aisle runner, greenery spilling down the sides like nature itself had been curated for display. A glass altar reflected the late afternoon sun, sending shards of light dancing across the polished floor. The scent of lavender and roses mingled with a faint trace of varnish. I found my seat in the second row, third chair from the aisle. The place card simply read "reserved." No name, no acknowledgement, a placeholder. That was me now. Invisible yet present. I lowered myself into the chair, the fabric of my green dress brushing softly against the aisle runner, and stared down at my hands. The veins were more pronounced than they used to be. The rings slipped loosely across my fingers, reminders that time does not pause for anyone, not even love. The woman beside me leaned in to whisper to her friend, a perfumed murmur. "That's the mother of the bride, I think." I saw her in the lobby looking kind of lost. I did not correct her. My voice had little weight in this world anymore, and silence had become a small act of defiance. I simply nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and let my gaze drift to the back of the barn, where vendors fussed with ribbons and light fixtures, each movement choreographed like a dance. In the aisle across from me, children, flower girls, and ring bearers practiced their steps, tiny shoes scuffing against the floor, whispers of "don't drop it" and giggles weaving through the air. My grandsons would be somewhere among them, though I did not yet know which one, nor would I be allowed to sit close. I exhaled slowly, remembering Selene at 7, balancing on tiptoe to blow out candles on a birthday cake I had baked, sugar daisies scattered like petals over chocolate frosting. She had squealed so loudly that day I had imagined the neighbors would hear our joy like fireworks. Then she had hugged me over and over, her little arms clutching tight, her face pressed to mine. She had loved me. She had wanted me. And now I was a reserved seat. I shifted slightly in the chair, feeling the cool air brush against my wrists. The green dress fit like armor, yet softened the edges of the woman I had become. I had spent a lifetime trying to be seen, trying to be wanted, trying to matter in the lives of a daughter who had traded affection for deadlines. Yet here I sat, present, quiet, and watching. A soft murmur floated from the entrance as guests began to trickle in. The whisper of silk dresses, the faint tap of heels on polished wood, the subtle scent of perfume drifting through the air. My heart beat steadily, slower than panic, faster than calm. I would not rush, I would not beg. I would simply exist here, visible, steady, and unshakable. And when Selene walked down the aisle, radiant in white, I would be here. Not as a guest, not as an observer, not as someone dismissed, but as a mother, as someone who had loved, sacrificed, and endured. A mother whose presence could not be ignored, even if her name had been stripped from a place card. I glanced once more at my hands, flexing the fingers, feeling the weight of rings, time, and memory. Then I looked straight ahead, deep into the light spilling through the barn doors, and waited. For a smile, a glance, a moment that might never come, but I would wait anyway. A young man in a headset approached, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Hendress?" "Yes," I said, steadying myself against the flutter in my chest. He bent slightly as though leaning in to keep a secret. "Travis would like to speak with you. He's in the staging suite." I followed him past the gift table where a gold-framed sign read, "Welcome to the wedding of Selene and Jard, where love is timeless and family is forever." I had to bite back a laugh. Love, family. The words floated in the air like decoration, meaningless, just as distant as the guests who would soon arrive. Upstairs, the suite was chaos dressed as glamour. Dresses were tossed across chairs, curling irons hissed and spit steam, makeup palettes spilled powder across countertops. A bridesmaid sat cross-legged on the floor, snacking on pretzels from a Ziploc bag, while another scrolled endlessly through Instagram, thumbs moving as though the photos there were real life. Travis stood in the center of it all, arms crossed, eyes sharp and measuring. "Mrs. Hendress," he said, voice clipped but polite. "We have an issue with the photo booth vendor. He says the deposit didn't go through." "That's impossible," I said, reaching into the folder I'd brought, the one containing copies of every receipt, contract, and authorization. It was scheduled with the others. "All payments processed through my investment account?" "Yes," he said slowly. "Well, he says otherwise." I handed over the folder. "Page 12, I said firmly. "Signed, dated, processed last Tuesday. Tell him to check his records again." Travis flipped through it, lips pressing into a thin line. He looked up almost approvingly. "You're very thorough." "I ran a business for 40 years, I said. "Laundry, not events, but books are books." "I'll handle it," he said, disappearing down the hallway with brisk efficiency. I turned to leave, but a voice floated from behind a curtain, soft, judgmental. "Seriously, Celine, you let your mother come in that dress?" I froze. I didn't know which bridesmaid it was. They all looked like mannequins in tan, flawless, sharp. "She insisted," Celine's voice came back, clipped, rehearsed. "I didn't have the energy to fight her. Let her wear what she wants. She'll be in the back row anyway." "I thought you said she was funding everything," the other voice said, a hint of disbelief. "She is," Celine replied flatly. "But that doesn't mean she has taste." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel exactly. It was detached, perfunctory, the laughter of people convinced they were being honest, stylish, superior. I did not reply. I did not argue. I simply walked away as quietly as I had come in, every step measured, every inch of my presence deliberate. Downstairs, the groom's family was beginning to arrive. Jart's mother, petite and pristine in coral lipstick and a string of pearls, posed for photographs near the arch, shoulders square, smile professional, as though she had built the house herself and therefore had the right to oversee every detail. A few nods and polite smiles came my way, strangers mistaking me for a venue employee, but no one spoke to me. I was part of the scenery, quietly funding it all, yet erased from acknowledgement. By 4:10, I went to the restroom to check my hair. The lights were bright, cruelly so, illuminating every line, every age mark. My green dress, purchased just for this moment, fit better than I'd imagined. Solid, respectful. Assertive, I looked into the mirror and gave myself a small, private smile. Someone had to see me as I wanted to be seen, even if no one else would. Then came the sound of a door clicking open just outside the restroom. Voices, low and hushed, reached me like a sting. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but my feet froze, hand gripping the doorknob. It was Jard. His tone was light, joking, intimate in a way that shouldn't have existed with 2 hours left until the ceremony. "God, your trouble," he said. "Do you know that?" A female giggle, soft, familiar, carried in the air. "You're the one who pulled me in here. I was just on my way to get my lashes fixed." A shuffle, fabric brushing fabric, words too quiet to catch fully. "Just 5 more minutes," Jard whispered. "She won't even notice I'm gone." "She? You mean your fiancé?" The woman laughed, sharper this time. The sound made something inside me recoil, not from what they were doing, not from betrayal or lust, but from the casualness of it. As though promises, the wedding itself, the family waiting downstairs were meaningless. As though the vows to be exchanged on pristine paper with lavender and gold were a formality, and the heart, the commitment, had long since been forgotten. I backed away slowly, heart steadier than my hands, and returned to the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, calm, composed, resolute. But beneath that calm, my hands shook, the tremor subtle, insistent. Not rage, not sorrow. Something quieter, a deeper note, a hum that had been building over years. The string had been pulled too tight for too long, and even now it could not be released. I took a slow breath, pressed my palms together, grounding myself. And I left the bathroom, quietly, carefully, past the guests, past the seating chart in calligraphy and the lavender-adorned chairs, out into the sunlight spilling between the trees. A day meant for celebration, and yet for me it had become a testament. To endurance, to love unacknowledged, to patience stretched taut like the string of a violin ready to snap. I didn't know where I was going, but my feet carried me back toward the side entrance, past the bustle of vendors taking smoke breaks and adjusting headsets. Their laughter, clipped orders, and shuffling boxes felt like white noise, background to a play I was no longer allowed to touch. No one looked at me, no one expected me to matter. I found a bench beside the catering truck, its metal sides warm from the sun. I sat and let the noise roll around me. Let them have their wedding, I thought. Let them eat their meals, sip their wine, pose for photographs in perfect light. I have eaten alone before, I can do it again. But there was a string inside me, taut for too long, tugging insistently, a reminder of the part of myself I had left quiet for decades. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the one name I trusted most. Franklin, my attorney. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Hendress," he said. I was just about to email the updated language for the vendor clauses. "Franklin," I interrupted, "I need you to prepare something else." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "I want to execute my rights as the legal party on all service contracts for today's event. Notify the bank immediately. Freeze all pending payments effective now." There was hesitation on the line. "Mrs. Hendress, the ceremony is in 2 hours. "That gives us time," I said. My hands rested on my lap, shaking slightly but steady. I was told I'd never see my grandkids again if I didn't fund this wedding. But if this is the example they're supposed to grow up watching, maybe not seeing them is kinder. Franklin was silent for a moment, then firm. "I'll begin the process now. Expect a call from the payment office within the hour." I hung up and didn't cry. Not then. Not when I saw Celine from a distance, radiant beneath the floral arch, white peonies and eucalyptus in her bouquet, smiling as if she were whole, as if nothing was wrong. I felt like a stranger watching from the edge of a movie set I had paid to build but was never allowed to step onto. A staff member approached, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me, ma'am. Do you need help finding your seat?" "No," I said, rising. I let my hands brush against the bench. "I need a ride." She blinked, slightly taken aback. "Leaving now? Should I let someone know?" "No," I said calmly. "Let them start the show." I walked back to the road and called a cab. The driver was young, with a single eyebrow piercing and a t-shirt that said nope. "Where to?" he asked. My address. I didn't tell him why I was leaving. He glanced at my green dress in the rearview mirror. "Coming from a wedding?" he asked. "Something like that," I said, and we didn't speak after that. Back at home, I shed the green dress for something softer. I brewed tea, the steam curling around my hands like reassurance, and switched on the lamp in the corner. Its warm glow turned the living room into dusk, no matter the hour, no matter the noise outside. Then I opened my laptop. Email after email, vendor after vendor, confirmations of contracts, invoices, deposits. I began sending formal notices, payment withdrawal, contract nullification, everything in my power to undo the scene I had funded but was not allowed to inhabit. Franklin responded promptly. The cancellation penalties would be steep. I didn't care. $520,000 had never been just money. It had been love I was trying to buy back, a currency I had hoped would guarantee connection. But like most things sold at that price, the love never arrived. It had been an illusion, packaged neatly with ribbons and flowers. My phone buzzed. A message from the bank, transaction block confirmed. $18,000 of remaining pending payments stopped. Partial services already rendered may not be refundable. Please confirm next steps. I typed back, proceed. Open trust account in grandchildren's names. Equal division. Another ping, this time from Celine. "Where are you?" "The planner can't reach the caterer." "What's happening? Mom, did you do something?" I turned the phone over. No answer is still an answer. I sipped my tea and let the quiet stretch around me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel small or overlooked. I felt exactly my size. A woman with a spine. A woman who could say no. A woman who could step away from a scene she had paid for and let it unravel around her without guilt, without apology, without the need to witness the chaos. Let the guests sit, let the music fade, let the ceremony proceed without me. Let my daughter look around and realize something crucial was missing. It wasn't the cake. It wasn't the flowers. It was me. The phone rang again and again and again. I let it ring. By the fifth call, I had already silenced it. Selene, then Jard, then Travis, then the white juniper office itself, as if the building had developed nerves and demanded answers. I opened the window a crack. The November air carried a chill that made my lungs expand. Outside, my neighbor bent over her rose bushes, scissors in hand, pruning carefully. A dog barked 2 streets over. The world, I noticed, was still turning even as their perfect wedding began to unravel. The first message came at 5:12. "Mom, where is the band? They're not here and no one is answering." Then another, "Travis said the bar is shut down. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. Yes, I was okay. More than okay. For the first time in years, I felt whole, as if the tight strings of obligation, fear, and guilt had loosened just enough for me to breathe. Across town, in a barn dressed like a fairy tale, the illusion had started to collapse. Franklin's update arrived via email, calm and precise, 3 bullet points with a PDF attachment. Catering services withheld due to breach of payment. Entertainment performance canceled due to frozen contract. Photography partial session halted, no post-processing authorized, and most important, every vendor had been told exactly who the financial backer was. Not some anonymous parent, not a discreet family contribution. Martha Hendress. Let them explain that now. Let them articulate whose hands had built the day and who had pulled the strings. I poured another cup of tea, steam twisting in the dim light, and opened the window wider. The breeze carried hints of pine, asphalt, and the faint sweetness of burning leaves. November had that edge, not winter yet, but enough to sharpen clarity. Travis texted. "Mrs. Hendress, I don't mean to intrude, but there's some confusion regarding payment status. Could we speak ASAP? No apology, no surprise, just logistics. That boy would thrive in finance." I didn't respond. Then came a voicemail from Selene. I didn't want to listen, but I did. "Mom, I don't know what's happening, but people are noticing. The food hasn't come out. Jared's parents are asking questions. I thought you were at the hotel. Where are you? Can you please call me?" Her voice was tense, stretched thin like a balloon on the brink, but not yet bursting. At 5:45, the first real crack appeared. Reed, my neighbor's nephew and part-time wedding staffer, texted out of nowhere. "Hey, Mrs. H, I'm working that Juniper wedding. Something weird is happening. Did you pull the plug? People are freaking." I smiled, set the phone down, and pictured it clearly. Guests scanning empty tables, glasses half full, servers missing, champagne untouched. Jared pacing in tight circles. Selene whisper shouting to anyone who would listen. Travis tapping furiously on a tablet, checking for missing invoices. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was justice, sharp, precise, quietly restorative. At 6:10, a knock rattled the door. Jared's mother. Her lipstick smudged, pearls constricting around her neck, eyes wide with disbelief. "Mrs. Hendress," she said, the veneer of civility stripped away, "we need to talk." I didn't move. "How did you get my address?" "Your daughter gave it to me," she admitted, voice tight. "She's in tears?" I asked. "Yes, Jared is furious. The guests are waiting. There's no food, no music, no anything. And now I hear you paid for the wedding and pulled out." "Yes," I said simply. She blinked, confusion warred with disbelief. "I don't understand. Why would you do that?" "Because," I said, calm, measured, 2 hours before the ceremony, I saw your son groping one of the bridesmaids behind a curtain. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's absurd." "I saw it. I know what I know," I said. "This is no reason to sabotage your own daughter's wedding," she pressed. "No," I said. "The reason is decades of being used, years of funding silence, years of being tolerated only as a wallet. And because it was all in my name." She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You're making a mistake. This will ruin everything." "No," I said softly but firmly. "It will start something." I closed the door behind her. Inside, the phone buzzed again. "Selene, please, people are staring. Jared won't explain. The cake hasn't arrived. You have to fix this. You have to, then if you don't, I swear I'll never forgive you." I stared at the screen and typed, slow and deliberate. "You threatened never to let me see my grandkids unless I paid. Now you threaten never to forgive me because I acted on my terms. I think we are done with threats." For the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt clean. By 6:40, the wedding existed only as a beautifully dressed disaster. Guests drifted away in small, polite waves, murmuring excuses about babysitters or early flights, excuses people invent when they don't want to admit the party is dead and they are leaving. The band never arrived, dinner never happened. The bartender packed up efficiently, a faint smirk playing at his lips. In the center of it all, Selene smiled, cracked and desperate, holding her bouquet as if sheer willpower could restore what was lost. Jared had vanished. I imagined him slipping quietly out the back, leaving responsibility and humiliation behind. At 6:58, Selene called again. Her voice, low and wavering, whispered through the receiver. "Mom, the food, the music, everything's gone. What did you do?" "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "I just stopped doing everything for you. You've ruined my life." "No, Selene. I saved mine." And in that silence, amid the echoes of a wedding undone, I let her sit in the consequences of her choices as I had for too many years. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened it expecting no one, maybe a delivery driver, maybe Travis with a clipboard full of panic. But instead, a young woman stood on my porch, one of the bridesmaids. She looked embarrassed to be alive, let alone here. "Hi, Mrs. Hendress," she said, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Nora. I guess I'm the reason the wedding didn't happen." I studied her. Mid-20s, maybe 27, beautiful in that soft, earnest way that fades fastest. But her eyes, those were the eyes of someone realizing life has consequences, real ones. "I figured it out," I said. Two voices behind a curtain, one man too sure of himself, one woman laughing like no one would ever find out. She swallowed, shame warming her cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I wasn't trying to hurt her." I nodded. "Most people don't mean to, they just do." Her face tensed like she might cry. I didn't comfort her. Sympathy is not a free commodity, but I stepped aside. "Come in," I said simply. She blinked, confused. "What?" I made soup. "Sit, warm up, face whatever you need to before you go back to hiding." After a long hesitation, she stepped in. She sat at the edge of the kitchen table like a child waiting for punishment. She glanced around at the framed photos, the worn curtains, the bowl of apples that always reminded me of fall mornings when Celine used to ask for slices dipped in peanut butter. "I've never seen her cry like that," Nora whispered. "Your daughter, she cried when she was 3, I said, "because I threw away a plastic necklace she made me. I didn't mean to, I was tired, cleaning too fast." "Did she forgive you?" Nora asked. "Eventually," I said. "But she never forgot." Nora stared at her hands, twisting the fabric of her dress. Then quietly, "You did the right thing." For the first time, I looked at her fully, not just the girl behind a bad moment, but a human being carrying the weight of her choices. And for all her mistakes, she had dared to come here. That was more than Jard ever would. "Eat your soup," I said. She did. Her spoon trembled with each lift, but she ate. I didn't comfort her. I didn't scold her. I just let her sit in the ruins like everyone else forced to face themselves today. When she finished, she stood, thanked me, apologized again. I didn't offer forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't a currency you hand out to soothe someone else's conscience. It's something time has to earn. After she left, I sat in the quiet, not the heavy quiet of loneliness, not the hollow quiet of rejection. This was a useful quiet. A quiet with purpose. A quiet where I could hear my own breath and know it mattered. I pulled out a notepad and made a short list, finalize the boys' trust, rewrite the will, change the title on the house, not revenge, clarity. I was done allowing my life to drift toward the people who shouted the loudest. It was time to place what mattered where it would be honored. At 8:15 the next morning, I called Franklin. "Good morning," he said in that tone lawyers use when they know you've changed course. "Rough night, clear one," I replied. "I need you to come by the house. I have meetings until noon. I'll make soup," he laughed. "That's better than most settlement offers I've had this week. I'll be there at 1. By the time he arrived, everything was laid out on the table. Folders, account statements, documents arranged in neat rows. He shook off the cold, sat across from me and opened his laptop. "I want everything secure," I said. "No backdoors, no overrides, no one gets access except me or a court order." He nodded. "Let's go piece by piece." It took nearly 2 hours. We transferred the house into a living trust with me as primary trustee and my grandsons as eventual beneficiaries. We restructured accounts, redistributed investments, redirected all remaining wedding funds equally into trust accounts for the boys. We rewrote the will, not with anger, but with precision. "You want to exclude your daughter entirely?" he asked gently. "No," I said. "She'll receive a letter." His brow furrowed. "A letter, a record," I said, "of what was asked, what was given, and what was lost. No bitterness. Just truth." He nodded slowly. Unusual, but wise. After he left, I settled into the armchair by the window, the same one I used to rock Celine in when her world was small and safe and I was the center of it. Outside, leaves drifted from the trees, slow and unafraid. On the shelf sat a framed photo, the boys' last Christmas building a lopsided snowman. One wore my old scarf, the other had cheeks so red he looked painted. I hadn't seen them since spring, not because I didn't try. Every visit came with conditions, warnings, rules. They need structure, Selene would say, as if love were chaos, as if joy were somehow harmful. Their distance wasn't sudden. It had been creeping, quiet water under a foundation, until one day the floor simply gave way, but I was still standing. At 4 that afternoon, a message arrived from an unknown number. This is Leo. Mom doesn't know I have her phone. Can I call you? I stared at the screen. 7 years old, too young to be sneaking messages, but old enough to feel when something is wrong. I typed yes. The phone rang 2 minutes later. Grandma, he whispered. Yes, sweetheart, are you mad at us? My throat tightened. Never, not for a moment. Mom says you don't want to see us anymore. That's not true, I said softly. I want to see you very much. A small pause. Can I come visit? I closed my eyes. For the first time since this all began, tears came quiet, hopeful. Yes, I said, you can visit any time. He arrived 2 days later, not with fanfare, not with permission, just a knock on the door.